Dessert Wine. Our musical selection for today is Fly Me to the Moon, baby. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Now let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. Now you are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. Well, you are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, 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 I love you. Okay, listen, I so love Lynette, and I am so privileged to be able to always get like a snapshot of the songs that she's going to introduce us with, or just open up our time together. Woohoo! Hey, fam, I am Alexis Roan, aka Alexis Grace, founder of Truth Meets Story LLC, expanding empathy one story at a time, and your host of Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine at Vespers. Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine at Vespers is a faith and adult storytelling series. By faith, I mean we explore, the mystery of how God shows up or is perceived absent. And the vehicle through which we, do this exploration is adult story. Now, by adult story, I mean stories that are told by adults, to adults, for people with a developed adult context. And for that reason, no apologies are ever issued for how we show up in this space. We assume that everyone is here can handle what it means to, quote, be here. 7-year-olds have a story time, and now so do adults. You're welcome. Listen, this has been this week. Do Jesus, do Jesus, do Jesus. My grandma always used to say, do Jesus. This has been an interesting week. When you attempt to show up in the world as honorable, as God-fearing, as loving, as someone who is committed to the common good, every now and again, folks will try you to see like, okay, did she really mean that she's going to do that? I really meant it. Now, I'm also very human and I fail. And because I fail, I am really good with repentance prayers. I'm going to tell y'all something about those people who love Jesus and they know how to repent. Don't come for us. Just everybody. Can we all just get along? That's what Rodney, the griot Rodney King, he told us that years ago. Can we all just get along? I've been thinking a lot about the deprecation of memory, the way we fail to remember who we are, where we've been, what's come before us. I had a series of very powerful meetings this week and some very interesting conversations. And I remember One of the people was very impressed by me simply because I remember the shit that happens. So there's nothing urgent about right now where I'm like, I have to forget everything. It's like, no, I remember and I hold what is happening right now in conversation and with an awareness of how, life is about ebb and flows and it all works out eventually. But first, unfortunately, a lot of times we cuss. Um, which I feel like is very, very healthy. I think that we have to figure out what do we have to do to enter into this space, into this moment, into this experience, into this life in a way that is real and right for us to just be and do and claim everything that we're supposed to have and to show up and to partner with God in healing the world. There are some of many of us who have that as an aspiration, like that is our intention. And then there are all those other folks who seem to actively work against that. And it can be really, really special. I've been reading Imani Perry's biography of Lorraine Hansberry called Looking for Lorraine. And she has been just blessing my life. Number one, I did not know that Lorraine died at 34. I mean, that's like dying as a baby. I just, it was just too young. But then for all of the things that she's done, that she did in her life, it was really interesting. But I was most fascinated by the story of her father and all of the adults in her life. She had a very privileged upbringing. They knew all the fancy people. They were the fancy people, and because she was just so real, she was just good people. She was like, okay, yeah, I know how to be with the fancy people, but the real folk over here, they have a more interesting way of showing up in the world. They're not tethered by conventions. They're just kind of free and wild. And that was very attractive to her. The only problem is when you're a part of the establishment, the elite, the word on the street is the way to be a quote credit to your race is to be as much like dominant culture as you can. So her father was a World War II veteran, very pro-American, very much a patriot, very much a belief in hard work and what it would net. And then he tried to move into a neighborhood in Chicago. He tried to buy some real estate. And our cousins were like, what you're not going to do is come up in our space. Our cousins was acting out. So he filed a lawsuit. I think it was the NAACP that filed on his behalf. And they would have to travel around to raise money, to build support for the case and that sort of thing. And he does end up winning the case and he, buys the property and all of that. But what the other part of that story was while he was touring and while he was building a case for the cause, he left his wife and his young children to be tormented, to be tortured, to be heckled, to be threatened by this white mob on a consistent basis. So he's out rallying for support, but his family is having to bear the brunt of the reality that they have not yet, the victory that the court case that they're fighting, they're having to bear the brunt of that. And so Lorraine talks about her mother carrying a weapon all the time. Now I like that. I'm like, shit, you can come up here if you want to. I'm gonna see what these bullets do. Show me, make me like help, like let me see what bullets do. Like they in this gun, they good. But for the children who don't have a developed context and they don't have a developed psyche, this was very, very difficult for her. But what was tragic for me was after her dad won the court case, and I think it's like case law, if I'm not mistaken. He wins the court case. But America is America. He thought that by doing all of the right things, by demonstrating that he was a credit to the race, by teaching his children to do the same, that somehow everything would be well with him and his family. And it wasn't. It just weighed on his psyche. It was just too much pressure. And so he went to Mexico. So I think it's called Ajijic, Mexico, Ajijic. I'm going to need somebody to help me pronounce that. But he goes to Mexico to basically bring the family over. He's gone ahead of them to find a place. He's like, I want my children to live in a country where it is not assumed that because of their Black skin, their only lot in light is servitude. I need for them to grow up in a space where they can be free, to live out their full-on actualized destiny. And while in Mexico, Lorraine's mother sends a, what was that? Like a post, like it wasn't a mail, like the old school. Somebody put it in the chat room, like what is it? Like a telegraph. Thank you. A telegraph. Mother sends a telegraph saying that their dad died unexpectedly while in Mexico. And she tells her children to be strong. But because Lorraine is so young, and her last living memories of her dad was of bitterness. It was of this failed idea about what their family, with all of their progressive ideas and with all of their exceptionalism, could do in this country. And he just said, fuck it, I'm just going to take my family to Mexico. That whole thing had a very, very deep imprint on her. And when I thought about how destructive bitterness is, I have taken very seriously my practices this week, like, what it is that I believe about how I need to show up in this world when things get hard, when we see things and we don't agree. I've been talking a lot about speaking up and what it does for all of us. As a matter of fact, this is a side story. So I live stream in a co-working space. I created my studio, and then there's a podcast studio upstairs, and it's like 11,000 square feet. And there are other entrepreneurs who also share the space. And so, you don't hear, on the weekends, there are not a lot of folks in here, like just very, very, like a handful of us maybe. But there was this young couple, and they're in here, every weekend as well. They go into like one of the hub rooms, and they're good. But I heard what I thought was like a ruckus in the back door. And so I'm like, is that some homeless folks? That's like what's going on out there? Like, like where are we? Like what's happening out there? And then the door opens, and then these two, these two young people, they come in. So when they see me, my studio set up, and like I'm getting everything. Like maybe I was shutting it down. They see me, they quiet down. But they go upstairs, and then they continue this very loud, very crazy argument, whatever it is that they're doing. And they're just not being very discreet about whatever are their issues. Now, I'm thinking that number one, we still ain't found Brian Laundrie yet. Gabby, he killed her like over a month ago. And now he's in the wind, and we don't know. And so all I'm thinking is like, okay, like what's my role? So when they would not stop arguing, I went up to the huddle room, and like it's all glassed all the way through, so they could see me coming. And then they saw me standing at the door, and then finally I knocked, and I opened. I was like, hey, listen, y'all good up in here? They were like, yes, we're fine. I was like, okay, because look, this was a week full of some bullshit. I need to make sure no bullshit happened up in here while I'm up, like, no. Everybody good though, right? And so then they assured me that they were. And so I left. And then the next week, I saw them, they were all lovey-dovey. And then one time though, they had another argument. They went outside. So much madness going on. How do you decide when you step in, when you step back? What's the rule? How do we show up in the world? I think that we do the good work that's right there in front of us. Like whatever is called for that moment, we need to just honor, and make a decision to show up to do that work. I told you about a meeting that I had scheduled with one of my white colleagues, who's a fellow creative here in the Triangle area in North Carolina, in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. And she and I were supposed to hop in the podcast studio, and we were going to talk about inclusivity and like this whole situation that I told you about last week. So that was scheduled for tomorrow. And then I got a text message from her on Thursday, but I didn't answer it until Friday. And basically, she was just talking about her bandwidth. Like she has a lot going on, and so she was giving me some of the, some of the things that were happening. And as disappointed as I was that we had to, that we have to reschedule our time in the booth, I am also grateful that when I said to her, "Listen, if you cannot do this, if this does not feel good to you in your body right now, I need for you to let me know. We can reschedule this. We're going to be good." I think it is interesting that the way Black women show up, it is nurturers of the whole community. Whereas for others, like when it's time for them to even remotely give us a thought, um, too often, it doesn't happen. And so that's why I'm fierce. I'm a fierce cheerleader. Like I go straight, no chaser, with the need for us to be good to ourselves and to decide what that looks like for us, what that needs to feel like. So for me, every morning I do my Divine Hours prayer walk, and then I have my meditation reading, and then I have oatmeal and iced coffee. Then I go to Whole Foods for some cucumber and mint alkaline water. My mama is like, "Well, you living all house to hard. The water out the tap don't come for free." Hey, mama, how you doing? If you're in the people, if you're in the virtual pews, tell the people hey. But I'm selectively open about everything that I do, because I recognize that the bitterness that Lorraine Hansberry's dad died with, that's a real thing, and the issues that he fought, and the way that he thought, if I just do it this way, then everything is going to be fine, and that didn't happen. You feel some kind of way. I get it. I get it. I get it. But what I don't want is for the bitterness to take root. I want to remember. And the only way I know to remember is to actively do the things that make me feel good, to show up, to show up, to show up, and to figure it out on my own. One of the other things that I do is I tell the truth about what I'm feeling and where I am. There is and I wish I knew who this person was. A friend of mine who actually gave it to me. Um, she didn't know where she got it from. Like I was like, "Yo, I'm quoting this all the time. I heard it over 10 years ago." But it's Proverbs 32, and it reads like this. It's 2 verses. First verse: "If you have a Black woman on your team, you will win." Verse 2: "But will she?" Selah. This whole week, fam, all I've been doing is thinking about what it looks like for me to, with these Psalm 1 blessed hands, the fact that I'm always going to show up and give my absolute best, the fact that if I'm on your team, you winning, but damn it, I need to make sure that so am I. And clearly, if the rest of the world is not really trying to look out for me, then it's on me. And guess what? I'm up for the challenge. I'm going to do that. I'm definitely going to look out for myself. But I'm not the only one. It feels like there's so many sisters that were silent. One of my sister friends, as a matter of fact, we were having a conversation, and she said something that broke my heart. But I think it broke my heart because it was true. I know it was true for her, and it was also true for me. She said, "I don't feel like I look. I don't feel like I look." Now, if you see this sister, then you know that she is like drop dead gorgeous, always positive, always loving, always affirming everybody else. There is never a negative word that is on her lips. But when she said, "I don't feel," she said, I don't feel like I look." I got it, fam. There's some of us who take a lot of hits to our psyche, hits to our to opportunities, hits to our confidence, our spirits. Like we are all the time battling, and it just feels exhausting and heavy. I remember before I left my corporate gig in 2000 to write my first book, Premature Pleasures, I was weary, and I was looking forward to the break. I was looking forward to what my life could be like as a creative. Before I left the gig, I took a creative writing class. I just wanted to uh, shore up my skills, and I was hoping to kind of build camaraderie with other writers, and kind of find my new village. And in this, in this creative writing workshop, um, some East Indian teacher, and she was very lovely. Very small, intimate class. But there was this white guy who would not attend all of the classes. Like, he would just pop in or out. And for me, I'm like, I'm at all of the classes because I want to make sure that my strategies are good, so that my content will be good and my book will be great. Like, my short story will be great, and all of that. So I'm doing the exercises and I'm working through all of the content strategies, and the strategies that she's telling us on how to build character, build plot. No. So then the day came for us to present our content, and the white guy was there. He had missed like most of the classes, but like he showed up with his story, right? So I want to say he may have read the story first, and it was like, it was above average. I remember that. But what I'll never forget was how he reacted when I read my story. Everybody was blown away. Everyone was holding on to their baby, but they were like, like I follow the strategy. Like, I'm like, this is like, she told us exactly how we're supposed to do it. I followed the formula, and then I got this masterpiece. But I'll never forget his sort of backhanded comment. He said, wow, did you write that? And I'm like, so that's why I can't stop cussing. That's why. Of course I wrote this, motherfucker. Like, I was just so annoyed that he was like, did you write this? Yeah, I wrote it. Like, did you not? Like, everybody has been in here presenting their, what they've written. And then he said, did that really happen? In his mind, there was no way that I could be as gifted as what that story was that I wrote. I had to be writing something that really happened. I couldn't be writing creatively. That was just beyond me. Well, it's not beyond me. That story was good. That particular story ended up becoming my first book, Premature Pleasures. And then the rest is history. I write content that is memorable. But my question was, am I memorable? Too often, I have been quiet and I have been silent because these things have wounded me, because these things have been heavy. And it just feels like, shit, like, I don't want to be labeled bitter, but I also don't want to cut your ass. I don't want to shank nobody. I want to be honorable and loving, and on and on. And so the way that I have just chosen to show up in the world is to just say it, to forgive myself for whatever comes in response, to engage in very intentional spiritual disciplines, to keep me focused, to keep me centered, to keep me on track, to keep me loving, keep me partnering with God for the common good. And I am grateful that my intentions have not just been about me, my quote brand. My brand is trying to pull as many other voices as I can to the table. And the voice that you're about to hear is one of my absolute favorite voices. And the story that she is going to share is about the genesis of when someone snatches your voice, but all of the ways that God dots your path with angels who help you to have your say, to transform your silence into language and then into action. Fam, you are about to hear from one of the favorite storytellers for Jesus, Jazz, and Dessert Wine. She is a Virtual Pews favorite. So with that, please welcome Miss Tecca Thompson as she dresses her truth in story.
It was April 2020, and I'm driving in my car, and my phone starts ringing. It's Alexis Rome. She's calling me on Messenger. A month before that, I was on Eventbrite and I was looking for storytelling workshops. I had got this desire to tell story and I wanted to be really good at it. So I'm searching on Eventbrite for workshops and I found Alexis Rome in her workshop, Transforming Silence into Language and into Action. But as the phone is ringing, my heart is pumping, it's beating. My hands were getting sweaty. My throat was closing up. My mouth was dry. And I know it sounds crazy because it's just a phone call, it's just a conversation. But all of this is familiar to me. It happens a lot. And I thought, I'm not going to answer the phone. I'm going to do my normal routine, which is to lie and say, oh, I missed your call. I'm sorry. Let me call you back. I'm going to call you back. And I take the time to get myself together to have the conversation. And it is incredibly humiliating to not be able to show up. And it's just a phone call. And I've never told anyone about how sometimes I can't even answer a phone and have a conversation. But I remember when I was 5 years old, I didn't have a problem with talking. I'm certain I showed up in kindergarten and stood in the middle of the room and said, I'm here. Look at me. I showed up. I was funny. I was charismatic. I was a leader. I was creative. And I was just full of energy. I had a friend. His name was Kevin, and he liked me. He used to follow me all around the classroom, and I hated it. It was so annoying. One day we had an assignment to color a red wagon, and he was sitting next to me, and we started to color our wagons red. And because I was a leader, I said, I got something for you today. So I grabbed an orange crayon, and he grabbed an orange crayon, and then I grabbed a green one, and then a purple one. And we got so wrapped up in what we were doing, we forgot the wagons were supposed to be red. And when we got done, we had psychedelic wagons. And my teacher, Mrs. Dawson, walked over to us and she looked me dead in the eyes because she knew it was all me. And she shook her head and she had this look on her face like, what am I going to do with this child? Like the time when she had to go just across the hallway to pick up a stack of papers. And she left me in charge because I was a good student. But I convinced most of my classmates to hide in the closet when she was gone. And then one day, a local news reporter showed up at our classroom and he needed 2 student volunteers to do a photo shoot for Valentine's Day. And when I was in kindergarten, I also thought I had superpowers. So I was standing in the room and I was looking at Miss Dawson and I was sending her a telepathic message. And I was saying, pick me, pick me. And she picked me. I knew I had superpowers. The only downside is she picked Wagon Boy too. And so we had to go outside, hold hands, and act like we liked each other for this picture. Ugh. But for me, the bright 5-year-old who I was, like, I feel like I coined the term Black Girl Magic before it was even a term. At least I thought I was. For me, being in the newspaper was like the best thing ever. I was excited when it was published to show my mom. And my mom looked at the picture and then she looked at me and she said, why didn't you button your coat? By the time I got to 2nd grade, that bright, talkative, creative child who was full of energy, she no longer fit the agenda of her family. That year at my teacher-parent conference, my teacher, Mrs. Shoulders, told my mom, Tecca's a great student, but she talks too much and she's always out of her seat. I knew in that moment, I looked at Miss Shoulders and I was like, I looked at my mom because I knew I was in big trouble. Because we had a rule in our house then, and it was don't talk. Do not talk about what's going on in our house. And I broke the rule. And I knew I was in trouble, and I kept thinking, like, why did I talk so much? I shamed myself for being me, for being who I was. Why did you talk so much? By the time I was 12 years old, I got the opportunity to say the Sunday announcements at my church, the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. And I remember walking up to the podium. It sat on the side of the choir stand, and I walked up to the podium and I opened the program, and no words would come out of my mouth. When it was time for me to use my voice, I was not able. I stood there, my heart started pounding, my throat started to close up, my ears were ringing, my hands were sweaty, and I felt like every eye in that church was just looking at me. And I heard a church mother say, "It's okay, baby, take your time." But it wasn't time that I needed, because the longer I stood there, the worse I felt. I wanted to disappear. I don't know about you, but in the Black church when you're growing up, being able to use your voice in some way, either singing, saying speeches, or speaking in church, is like a rite of passage. And I failed. I don't even remember how I got back to my seat, but I remember sitting down and my face was hot and red, and I was humiliated. I felt like I had let the church community down. And then I felt judged. And that day began to mark how I showed up in the world, this complicated relationship with my voice and my body. But all of that creativity and that energy, it had to go somewhere. It couldn't just stay in that body. And so I began to put my focus onto something else, which was something physical, which was basketball. And I excelled in basketball. I became a high school All-American. I got a scholarship to college. I went off and I was successful, right? The outside did not look like what the inside felt. I was having a successful life. I remember in the 9th grade, I got asked to go to homecoming, and I made it to the dance. I had this white dress and I made it to the dance. I sat down and I never left the chair. The thought of me getting up and going to the dance floor where everyone would be watching me. What if I made a mistake? That thought kept me glued to the chair for the rest of the night. I wouldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. And as I became an adult, even in my workspace, I had been given opportunities to speak. And I can recall this one time when I walked up to the microphone and I got ready to speak. My heart started to pound. My hands were sweaty. My throat closed up. My mouth was dry. I was trembling, and I could only say my name. Can you imagine the humiliation of an adult in that space? Your coworkers, your boss. So you humiliated again. But somehow, in my mind, in my heart, in my body, I've always known that I was supposed to use my voice for a greater purpose. Can you imagine being called to do something, being called to use your gift, and your body literally locking it down inside of you? It's very painful. Fast forward back to April 2020. I'm driving in my car. My phone is ringing. It's Alexis Roan on Messenger. I pick the phone up. Alexis is screaming in my ear, And although my heart is pounding and I'm going through this thing that my body does, she is excited because once you take one of her workshops, she asks you to submit 3 stories. And I submitted the story to her the day my mom taught me how to pray. She was so excited for that story that she invited me to Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine to tell my story. And it's been almost a year ago. I'm not going to lie. When I showed up that night, I was scared. My body was going through its thing. It was, my mouth was dry. My heart was pounding. But what I learned from Alexis and her workshop, Transforming Silence into Language and Action, is that I was going to show up because it was important for me to speak my story. And I did it, but it was uncomfortable. But through the silence of the lockdown during the pandemic, I also found my way to a practice of somatics. And I was like, with somatics, what is this thing? It's just a practice of gentle movements that you do that allow you to unlock those contractions, energy, and trauma and stress from your body. And so every day I practiced somatics and connected with myself. And I was able to unfreeze my body and my voice. I have a friend, her name is LaShonda. She's a therapist, and she calls all of those little unhealed parts of us our littles. And so through the practice of somatics, I was able to let my 5-year-old back out, the good parts of my 5-year-old. Because now I'm in leadership, and I would never want to lead people into a closet. I want to lead people to transformation. But the best part of somatics is I was able to let my 12-year-old know she didn't need to be afraid of the microphone anymore. I was able to let her know that we were going on a journey to finally use our voice to encourage other people. And so now, when it's time for me to step up to the mic and tell a story, I'm excited. I'm also excited to be able to share my practices, somatics, with everyone. I'm actually learning how to be a coach to teach other people the practices. It was such a profound thing that I felt like I need to bring this back to our community, to bring it back to us, so that we could experience that healing as well. And so this is my journey of unlocking my gifts, my talents, my dreams, and transforming my silence into language and into action, because my story is the solution for someone else's problem.
Baby, that's what I'm talking about. I need for people to stop playing with me. Okay? I need for people to like take all of this seriously. Tecca, you are my proof. You are my proof. Okay, and I don't apologize for yelling in your ear that day, April. My mother would be very like, she's always like, why you gotta be so loud, whatever. And then mama just posted, share your practice. Like that's what we're supposed to do. So you're supposed to like know, like once the solutions that you now have, you are responsible for showing others how to do that. That is how we're all going to come up. That's just how it works. There's something though that you said. I want to quote you. You said, "Oh, this was powerful. This was so powerful." When that church mother said, "Baby, take your time," but you were like, it wasn't time that you needed. It wasn't time that you needed. But what was interesting for me was that over time, you would eventually find your way there. You would find your way to where you needed. Then you said, "Oh, that day I began to show up in the world quiet." But then you ended with, "I wouldn't want to lead anyone into the closet, but I want to lead them into transformation." Tecca, just all of that. But even the whole body part, talk with me more about that. And Dr. Lamb posted, and put her comment back up. She said, the healing happens in your heart and your body. She is, very, very, she has a very active practice, like, just kind of this integrated healing journey as well. And it's only been recent that I have been paying attention to body. Even the woman that said earlier that, she and I were supposed to have the meeting, we're supposed to have this podcast recording, but I wanted to know, like, you don't have to give me an excuse. Just tell me how this meeting feels in your body. And maybe your
Mhm.
body is telling you that it's not time for
Mhm.
you to do this. I'm ready. So we can do it anytime. But talk with me about what you know about body and and silence and body, language and body. What has been your yeah.
Well, it's just like what you said, Lex, is that a lot of times we're showing up on outwardly, and we can do it. We push ourselves through it, but it's not. There's a sense of not feeling safe in our body, and so literally, whenever I got ready to step up to the microphone, or even sometimes have conversations with people, my body felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Like, public speaking is uncomfortable for people, but for me, my body felt like I was in danger because it kept taking me back to that day in the church where, I'm not a therapist at all, but that's a little T trauma. That's not a big trauma like sex abuse or anything, but it changed me. It changed the way that I showed up in the world because I became very socially awkward. And I had a conversation with Alexis about this, and she did not believe me. And my family's on this call right now. They're probably going to be like, that's not true. She talked all the time. But again, we can show up and outwardly be okay, but the inside's just going crazy. And integrated transformation comes from when you're able to do the mindset and the body together at the same time, because we can affirmation ourselves and talk ourselves into coming and telling a story and literally feel like you're going to die on the inside. But until your body, or like my friend LaShonda says, until your littles are okay with what you're going on. Like, I have a conversation with my little today, my 12-year-old little. Are you ready? We're going to see Alexis. We're going to tell a story. Are you okay with that? I think we can do this today. So
Wow, wow, wow. Oh, Tecca, just so much. Okay, we need to go to the virtual pews here. Uh, Rodney Thompson says, you were and are your Thompson self. Radiant Mind with April C says, amen, Tecca, you are unlocking your gift and giving us all permission to do the same. Ashe, that part. Yes, Appa says, yes, she said transportation and she changed it to transformation. We see you, we knew what you meant. Michelle says, I'm excited more than ever about being a responsible solution to my community. We cannot take this information and decide, oh, this is really good, inspirational, like sweet way to do it. Like, no, hashtag solutions are being offered up in space. Jerty says, yes, thank you for sharing. Healing, healing. Maurice says, little t traumas are still trauma. Absolutely. Our body remembers the things our mind sometimes chooses to forget. And sometimes it just feels safe to forget. Like we think like, look, we're just gonna leave that alone. We're just gonna let that go. But the reality is we don't forget. And what if we can heal? If healing is an option, then I say we heal. Dr. Lamb says any trauma always results in silence. We cannot access what we need to without the mind body integrative work. Exactly. Yes. We're so used to living this bifurcated experience. And I think, particularly Black women, like when we have to, I don't want to be perceived as bitter. I don't want to be perceived as, uneducated or unable to do the work. So let me just kind of put on. And the whole time we're just like, wait, like all of this is connected to something. Let's do the work. Let's do the work. Let's do the work. Okay. So Atha says, you have always been encouraging, sis. Now that I can believe. That I can absolutely believe. Terry says, brave work, keep going. Yes, yes. And then I said, this is so profound. You have made me think of my 5-year-old self and my trauma. Exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And the fact that, we can heal. Like healing is available. The solutions that have helped us, we are then sharing those solutions. And would you say that when you signed up for that workshop, so because you didn't talk about this in the story, but when you found the Transforming Silence into Language and Action workshop on, I think it was Eventbrite,
Mhm.
what was it that made you sign up for it? If
Well,
silence was kind of a more comfortable posture for you.
Well, I had this, if you go back and listen to any of my other stories, I was being called to tell a story, but I knew inside of me it was going to be difficult. And I honestly just found story. It was just storytelling. I didn't even know who Audre Lorde was. I didn't know what this transforming, whatever. But it has such a huge impact on me because of Audre Lorde and her words. And this is a paraphrase, but in a sense, she's saying if it's important to you, say it. It doesn't matter if it comes out bruised, wrong. If people don't even really understand it, you just have to say it.
Absolutely.
And in another one of her papers, she talks about it's better to speak. And that one really, because it says you're going to be afraid if you say it,
Yeah.
and you're going to be afraid if you don't
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah. That's her
So
poem, A Litany for Survival. Yeah.
a litany for
Absolutely.
survival. You
Yep.
might as well speak because either way you're going to be afraid. And then she goes on to talk about our lineage of that we were bodies never meant to
Survive.
survive, and that is a
Mhm.
lot of this silencing too. But I'm not going to get into that.
I know, because listen,
Yeah. So I wasn't expecting to get what I got, but it was the bridge that took body to the point where yes, it's uncomfortable, but I'm being called to tell stories. I need to do it. And so it was a combination of your teaching and the words, the introduction to Audre Lorde, that when you called me, I was like, oh my God. But I'm like, I'm going to speak. I'm going to tell my story.
thank you for trusting me. That's all I ever ask. I'm like, listen, y'all, I created this platform not because I'm like, oh, look at me and I'm so fancy and I'm so whatever. I'm like, look, I know people who are holding solutions so that all of us, for the common good, we will all come up together, we will all thrive. And so thank you for trusting me for that. Where can people follow you? I needed to put that up. Like what's the way if people want to keep up with what you're doing with your work on semantic, the
Uh,
semantic practice.
Yeah, so the website is www.sacredhealingspaces.com. And then I also have the Sacred Healing Spaces business page on Facebook. And then you can always just follow me on Facebook too, because
Okay.
it's all there. Everything's there. So we got some
Okay.
good stuff coming up. Good stuff
Oh,
coming.
okay. Good deal. And when do we start back up with the our
Conversation
lounge,
Lounge.
conversation lounge?
I'm so glad you asked that question because this month we're going to start on the 21st, I think it is. But we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do a story exchange.
Ah.
So, yeah, I'm going to push myself out there to facilitate something a little different, but it is an exercise in uh, empathy and holding one another's sacred stories. And so we're going to do a story exchange. Of course, it's for women of color. So I'm excited and I'm hoping that we have a full house.
Good deal. We're going to work to make sure you get a full house. It says, I think a lot of our silence comes from our upbringing. Absolutely. Children are to be seen, not heard. And not just that. I think that even that injury that you suffered, when your mother, you're excited and she says, like there's this criticism. Like, why didn't you,
Mm.
to know, like, you look so beautiful. I'm so proud of you. Like, this is so awesome. It was like, it was a critique that she offered. So yeah, that those critiques go a lot. But you're right. I feel like also children are taught to be seen and not heard. Go ahead, Tecca, what were you about to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, during our tech rehearsal, you asked me a question about what do you think you needed that day? And I've been thinking about that. And on tech rehearsal night, I said, I think it would have been nice if someone would have came and stood beside me. And I still
Oh, at the
think that,
church.
yes, at the church
Okay.
when I was 12, I think that still would be nice. But later I was thinking, what would have been nice is if someone would have taught me how to regulate my nervous system. Can we normalize that? Can we
Right.
normalize
Right. Yeah.
teaching young kids that, you have the system in your body and you can work with it.
And not
Yeah.
just that, I love that because it also teaches agency over body, as opposed to
Mhm.
like, oh, you have this natural skill or you don't have the natural skill. No, everybody has something to say. Everybody has a story, and everyone has a responsibility to step to the mic. Now, for those for whom it's more challenging, these are the strategies for regulating, like what that looks like. And so I'm so grateful that you're doing that work. Anna says here, a storyteller understands their responsibility in their community. Anna understands. Anna understands the calling. Rodney says, so proud of you, Tecca Lynn. Anna says, yes, I agree. Rachel's like, amen. Okay, we got the amen corners. And let me see here. I've skipped one. Okay, April, she says, I love the conversation lounge. I'm so excited for the story exchange. What day is that again?
I believe it's October 21st. It's
Okay,
on,
so it's
the
coming up very
tickets are on Eventbrite or Facebook events.
okay. Sacred Healing Spaces can also find them there as well. A link. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Maurice says, thank you both for creating and cultivating this healing space. Maurice, thank you, fam, for partaking in our offerings. We are doing the work with great intentions. Dr. Lam says, regulate our nervous system solutions. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Okay. So, what are you
Oh,
laughing at? Regulators, mount up. Agency over our body, y'all speaking truth. Yeah, and I believe that it needs to happen, when our children are young. Like that is such an important tool. So I'm grateful that you are, you're again, doing all of the work. Well, Tecca, thank you so much for just showing up in the space, for being your amazing self. And I always love having you. I always love featuring you on Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine and Vespers. You always come with solutions. You always come with your full self, your beautiful self. And I did not know that we were still having to have those conversations, but I'm grateful that you know how to speak to your littles. And you tell your littles that Lexi Poo really appreciates them for. You tell them if Lexi Poo had been there, all would be well with them. There would have been, I'd have shut down all of that stuff. But I came when I came, when God ordered the sign. So thank you, sis, for being present with us. I so appreciate you. All right, let me put you in the back in the green room. Don't leave me. Family, I tell y'all every week, it's always this amazing opportunity for people to just let us know how we can do life on this side of heaven better. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult, but guess what? There are solutions, and a lot of these solutions are found in these stores. Okay, now there are 4 things that we do at Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine before we close out. First is we offer a public lament. I talked with you earlier about my friend who said that she does not feel like she looks, like there's a disconnect. She looks beautiful. She feels exhausted and just overcome by grief and just not sure, but all the time walking in this light, like showing up as light, but not really feeling like light. Her inside is different. Now, I've been talking with you about how I lament those who are quiet when they need to speak up. But what I think I lament right now is how for some of us it is just harder than others. Everybody is fighting the fight that nobody knows about. But the reality is some of us have been fighting that fight for a long time. Lorraine Hansberry talked about her dad is trying to just do right by the family, but while he's doing right by the family, her mama has to carry a pistol. And they have to go out to these lines where people are spitting on them, adults spitting on children because they don't like their brown skin. It's hard, and it's been hard. That is what I lament. I lament that sometimes it feels harder for Black women than it does for others. Everybody is fighting a fight that nobody knows about. Here's my prophetic hope. We ready for that motherfucking fight. We ready for it. What we're not going to do is act like, oh, I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired. I'm so this. You know what? We are exhausted. We are tired, and we are annoyed by all of them. We are also equipped for the fight. There are 3 things that I would like for us to consider that is a part of the healing ritual that's going to help us to show up in the midst of a context that we don't all the time get to control all of the different things that are happening around us. But what we can control is how we show up and then the solutions that we offer for others. The first is ritual. I think that ritual, oh my goodness, I'm about to show y'all this. Let me show y'all what ritual looks like. Ritual therapy, spiritual content. Before I pull these images up, I was at the museum earlier today, the North Carolina Museum of Art. And oh my goodness, it's not letting me go. It's not letting me go here. I was at the Museum of Art, North Carolina Museum of Art earlier today. And I'm posting this in the comments section, a video that I recorded about the ritual therapy and spiritual content. So feel free to watch that video when you want later. Here are some images that I was privileged to be part of. It was a part of an exhibit sponsored by the Beautiful Project, and it was all on ritual, and the ritual of hope, the ritual of release, the ritual of lament. It was about the power of rituals. It was multidisciplinary, and what I want to do right now is I'm going to pop up some images, and I'm going to read just a few of the comments from the spoken word pieces that were done in conjunction with this. It was film, poetry, and then there was an installation dance that was done with it. So here's the first one. That is our beautiful Cindy Love. She was being featured in this particular series. She says, our hair raising in cathedrals. Our wings are such fragile things. When we gathered, we become home. Aren't you tired of holding strength? Our matriarchs crafted hymns from dust-covered promises. A ritual of release, a ritual of hope. Live, brown girl, wrapped in sunshine. Live and transcend. I was so encouraged this morning as I attended that installation, as I watched the beautiful images, as I listened to all of the ways in which beautiful Black women showed up as artists and gifted this opportunity for sacred healing through ritual and the way we see it. We are carrying some hard stuff, but my prophetic hope is that through ritual, therapy, and spiritual content, we're going to be just fine. So we are the last ones that you to pity. Watch us. Learn from us. We are #solutions. And just hella cool on top of that. We got this. The Lord goes ahead of us. That is my prophetic hope. Now, here is my energizing memory. I had another art exhibit that I attended, and it was put on by the art space. And so they told us, like, what, I think it says, what makes you happy? And I put Jazz Fest in New Orleans on the second Sunday in a crowd singing along with Frankie Beverly. #We are one. I can't wait for the Jazz Fest to come back around and for me to be able to go back into that crowd safely and for us to sing in unison, We Are One. That is my energizing memory. And finally, the last thing we do, Jesus, Jazz, and Dessert Wine, we talk about giving. Tecca said that when the mother said, baby, take your time, she said, but it wasn't time that I needed. But in that moment, it wasn't time that she needed. But guess what? Over time, some amazing things happened. There was healing. There was presence. There was protecting the littles. There was finding a way to have your say. There was the litany of survival, recognizing that silence does not protect you. You're afraid when you're quiet. You're afraid when you speak. But guess what? The silence doesn't protect you. But in all things, I would say give it time. I had a very powerful therapy session this week. And what I realized was that for all of the ways my tribe is amazing and they're fancy people and they're well read and they are anointed. And I'm like, yes, like we're going to be good. We're going to be good. I still needed to go see a professional to help me with some stuff. And so for all of the things that I had been carrying, this particular situation, this time, this meeting with my therapist, she gifted me the solutions that I needed. And I was lighter because she told me how to see it. She gave me a frame. She gave me a metaphor, and it absolutely worked. So, but it took time. So give it time. Don't give up on it, but most definitely give it time. Now, before we go into our blessing and our sending, let me turn here to the virtual pews. Okay, let me see here. Everybody's like still like, yep, you getting your love, Tecca. Everybody's like just so enamored with with what you've done, all of that. Okay, you'll be able to click on that link and you can see that story. Says Rodney says, thank you for sharing. Your transformation will inspire others. Absolutely. Michelle says, yes, I'm tired of holding strength. I want to excel. Yes, and you know what, Rochelle, I believe that we decide when we want to inhale and exhale. So I say, sis, let's figure out how to get you to exhale, and instead of like constantly like acting like we're strong, holding strength. Watch us, learn from us, don't pity us. Be very clear. And I had to say that because one of the meetings that I took, and beautiful person, one of our cousins, love our cousins, love the brothers and sisters, love the cousins. Meeting with one of the cousins, and she was talking about a very difficult situation that had happened, and she caught some crazy stuff on tape. And I think because this was racist content, her expectation was that somehow I would be just triggered. I was like, fuck him. Like, I don't care about, any of that. Like, so what that got to do with me? Like, I'm still incredible. I am still doing the work, and I am still providing the solutions. And even for her, she was like, oh my God, you're spiritual, so this, that, or the other. Now I'm thinking, don't be coming up in here trying to act like I'm supposed to be scared because you used to know some racist white dude who was able to get on, on a tape, spouting some of his racist bullshit. I was like, that has absolutely nothing to do with me. Don't pity me. We are equipped for this fight. We got this. Follow us. Don't pity us. Follow us. Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, Rochelle. And Nathan says, thank you, Alexis Roan. Thanks to my friend Tecca. This is my first time to your platform. Oh, welcome, sis. Subscribe and come back like every week. Like that's how we show up. Like we like these again, #solutions. Says, I'm glad I showed up because it's so inspiring. I've enjoyed this time with you and with Tecca. Blessings, sis. I appreciate that. This says, I'm tired of feeling stagnant. Yep. Although I'm moving, I'm not sailing. Now, see, I'm going to have to do something with them words. I'm moving, but I'm not sailing. Spiritual walk is moving, but I feel like I'm not doing what I'm called to do, which is help others. Well, you know what? I feel like the fact that you were able to own that, sis, my prayer for you is that hashtag solutions for how you sail, how you move forward, how you sail. I pray that that solution is coming forward. Shell says hugs and kisses. Absolutely, there's tons of love in this group with in our virtual pews. Okay, now before I let you go, next week. I laugh as I pull this picture up because he is one of my favorite people. He is so hilarious. And he every week when he shows up in the virtual pews, he says that he's using his phone, he's not able to chime in. But I always get a phone call or a text message after every Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine, and he's cracking up jokes on me, whatever. And so when he has been like watching all of the other stories, he says, "Why you got me coming on here like I'm the court jester?" I'm like, "You're not the court jester, Ruben. You are an adult storyteller who has something funny to share. And I need for you to be in place, and I need for everybody to show up next week as Ruben gives us some comedic affirmation. But it's also very deep. So it's not just like funny just for the sake of being funny. Trust me, like he has something very interesting to say. He is a retired sheriff's deputy, and he's going to share a story about something that happened in that capacity. So let's see, Donna says, Tecca, thank you for your truth and transparency. Yes, Tecca, let me thank you again. And again, I want everyone to show up, come back next week as we have Ruben Morales and we continue in the space. And now our blessing and our sending. What I love about everyone who shows up to Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine is that you are already a special kind of a niche group that already kind of knows some things. You know the right way to go. You know the right way to move. And you appreciate being able to come into a space where something is going to get said. Grown folks are going to have an adult conversation. And somehow, just the mystery of how the divine sovereign shows up and just meets us where we are, but does not leave us where we're found. We get to come in here and we get to say it like we feel it. I pray that this week you have that divine encounter, that divine covering, that divine love. How precious are God's thoughts concerning you? They're too many to be numbered. May you feel that reality. May you give it time. May you show up in the world in a way that feels good to your body, your spirit, your mind. May you lead from the front. May as others watch your life, may they inquire genuinely how they can embody that same light or whatever. And as we continue to do the work to show up, when we don't feel like what we look like, when the inside does not match the fabulousness of the outside, that's okay. Love to yourself. Ritual, therapy, consume spiritual content. You know the right way to go for you. I pray that you have the courage to walk in that. The world is waiting. A weary world is waiting for you. Be present. The Lord goes ahead of you. Ashe, Selah, so be it. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you next week.
My funny Valentine, sweet Comet Valley.